The Star Wars Dark Force Jedi Knight novelization by William Dietz, along with Dark Force Saga Part 6 their article, fundamentally distort the final battle between Kyle Katarn and Jerec as depicted in Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2 in 1997. Instead of preserving the game's original well-defined sequence of events, where Kyle tactically denies Jerec access to the value of the Jedi's power before defeating him in direct combat, the novel and the articles attempt to impose a great mystical reinterpretation. This revisionist approach not only models the original intent of the scene, but also introduces contradictions, particularly regarding the role of the stone mechanisms and the visual representation of Derek's energy cocoon. In Dark Forces 2, the final confrontation with Jerec is structured around the idea that he's attempting to harness the immense power of the Valley of the Jedi. The game represents a straightforward sequence. Jerec begins to drain the valley's energy, standing within a glowing yellow energy cocoon as he feeds on the spirits of Jedi and Sith alike. Kyle, understanding the danger, manipulates the valley's Jedi Stone mechanisms to shut down Jerec's access to this power source. With the energy cut off, Jerec is left to fight Kyle on more even terms. Kyle ultimately defeats him in a duel, delivering the final strike. Jerec perishes, and the spirits trapped in the valley are freed. This depiction is grounded in clear, observable actions. The valley is presented as a physical location with specific mechanisms that regulate its power, and Jerec's ritual is visually depicted as him actively draining energy. The outcome is logical. Jerec, deprived of his shortcut to godhood, is no match for Kyle and falls in combat. Rather than staying true to the game's sequence, the novel by William needlessly reinterprets Kyle's actions, implying that he does not simply block Derek's access to the Valley's power, but instead severs his connection to the dark side itself. This shift dramatically alters the nature of the battle. Instead of using the stone mechanisms to block Derek's power source, Kyle is depicted as wielding some almost godlike Jedi ability to spiritually cut Jerec off from the dark side. Jerec's death is not merely a defeat in battle, but a metaphysical punishment, making it seem as though Kyle acts as an arbiter of the Force itself, rather than a warrior who outmaneuvers his opponent. This change undermines the integrity of Dark Forces 2 original story. It shifts Kyle from a skilled combatant using strategy into some quasi-mystical figure performing a wall of light exorcism, despite no prior evidence in Dark Forces 2 that he's capable of such feat. The game portrays him as a skilled but grounded Jedi Knight, while the novel inflates his abilities beyond what makes sense for his character at this stage in his journey. One of the most egregious misunderstandings introduced by the novel and later Star Wars articles is the complete misrepresentation of the yellow energy cocoon surrounding Jerec during his final ritual. In the game, the cocoon is Jerec's doing. It is a visible manifestation of him actively draining the Valley's power. This is consistent with Sith behavior towards Star Wars. Sith Lords harness external energies to grow stronger, and this cocoon represents Jerec's feeding on the Valley's life force. However, later retellings in the novel and the Dark Force saga bizarrely reframe the cocoon as Kyle's action. Instead of Jerec's siphoning power, the scene is twisted into Kyle supposedly creating a wall of light to cut Jerec off from the dark side. This completely reverses the scene's original meaning, transforming a moment of Jerec's strength into a moment of Kyle's power. Instead of Jerec being at his most dangerous before Kyle shuts him down, the novel absurdly suggests that Kyle is done altering Derek's fate on a spiritual level. The problem here is obvious. Dark Forces 2 clearly shows Derek's cocoon as something he generates, not something Kyle imposes upon him. By forcing a new explanation onto an established visual, the novel and articles retroactively override the original intent of the scene, leading to confusion about what is actually happening. Why this change hurts Dark Forces 2? Because it strips Jerec of his agency. In the game, Jerec is an active threat till the moment of his death, relying on his own power and arrogance. The novelization, however, diminishes him, making him a passive victim of Kyle's supposed Jedi purification. Instead of dying as a powerful Dark Jedi, he becomes yet another Sith who sees the light at the last second, a tired trope that Dark Forces 2 originally avoided. It misrepresents Kyle's abilities. In Dark Forces 2, Kyle is still on his journey to becoming a Jedi. He's skilled, but he's not a mystical master capable of altering someone's fundamental connection to the Force. The novel artificially inflates his powers in a way that is inconsistent with both the game and the broader Star Wars mythos at this point in his story. It creates confusion about the Valley's power. The game establishes a simple, understandable rule. The Valley's energy can be harnessed, but access to it can be physically blocked. The novel models this by implying that Kyle's interference is spiritual rather than mechanical, making it unclear whether the Valley is governed by physical or by nebulous force abilities. It undermines the original scene's clarity. The yellow energy cocoon was a clear visual representation of Jerec feeding on power. The novel and later articles completely misinterpret this, turning it into a contradictory moment where Kyle is supposedly the one imposing a wall of light rather than Jerec being the one absorbing energy. This misreading changes the meaning of the entire battle in an unnecessary way. The novelization Dark Forces 2 and its associated articles did not enhance the original story, they weakened it. Instead of preserving the game's clear, logical sequence of Kyle cutting off Derek's access to the Valley's power before defeating him in battle, these retellings forced a mystical reinterpretation that contradicts the game's events. By turning Kyle into some kind of Jedi Redeemer, rather than a warrior using his wit and skill, and by misrepresenting the energy cocoon as something imposed on Jerec rather than something generated by him, these later versions distort Forces 2's climax beyond recognition. Rather than respecting the original game's storytelling, these revisions attempt to retrofit the scene into a broader Star Wars framework that it was never meant to fit, ultimately making the narrative less compelling and more confusing.